He came to my porch with a bouquet like a small sunrise in his hands, and one quiet sentence rewrote years I thought were already set in stone. I wasn't looking for a turning point that afternoon. I was just sweeping pollen from the steps. But when Andrew said what he'd kept to himself, the air changed, my heartbeat changed, and the story I'd been telling myself about my life shifted. Softly, stubbornly, completely. Before I begin, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I love picturing where you are as I tell this. The neighborhoods, the porches, the kitchens, the quiet streets. It makes me feel like we're all sitting together. My name is Margaret. I'm 47, and my porch is old enough to speak if wood could talk. It faces a narrow street shaded by maples that hold sunlight like a bowl holds milk, and on afternoons like this one, the boards glow a warm amber. I was wearing the same blue cotton shirt I always wear for chores, and thinking about nothing more important than whether the loose nail on the third step would give up and stay put this time. Andrew lives 2 doors down, in the White House with the dark green shutters that always look recently wiped clean. He's the kind of neighbor who remembers trash pickup when you forget, who knows exactly what time the mail carrier comes, who waves without making conversation you're not in the mood to have. We've shared 1,000 small nods over the years. The wind's picking up nod, the your package is at my place nod, the snow again, huh? Nod. And behind those nods, there were longer looks I kept myself from naming. I heard his boots on the walk before I saw him. When I looked up, he was at the gate, holding a bouquet wrapped in brown paper. Not roses, something kinder. Daisies, I thought. Yellow and white, simple as bakery frosting. "Hey, Margaret," he said, stopping at the bottom step. "Do you have a minute?" It wasn't unusual for him to stop by, but there was a carefulness in his voice, like he'd practiced that line and was giving it back to me exactly as it had sounded in his head. I set the broom against the rail and wiped my palms on my jeans. "For flowers," I said, smiling because it felt easier than asking the dozen questions that wanted to rush out. "I've got as many minutes as you need." He climbed the steps slowly, the wood giving a little under his weight. Up close, I saw he'd trimmed his beard too close in one spot, the kind of human mistake you only notice when you're paying attention. He handed me the bouquet, and the light did that thing it does late in the day, turned every petal into something see-through and golden. "Daisies," he said, as if reading the thought right out of my face. "My mom liked them. She used to say they were honest flowers." "Honest," I repeated. "I like that." There was a silence then, but not an empty one. We both looked out toward the street. Across the way, Mrs. Reynolds was wrestling a bag of potting soil out of her trunk. From some radio far down the block, a song from years ago made a shy entrance, all tambourine and soft harmony. In that easy, ordinary soundtrack, something else hummed, a tighter note like the string on a guitar he hadn't quite tuned. "Sit with me," I said, because if he was going to say what I suspected he might, I didn't want him saying it while he hovered like a door-to-door apology. I led him to the 2 chairs that bracketed my little table. I put the flowers there, still wrapped, because unwrapping them felt suddenly ceremonial, like I should wait for the right moment. We talked about every safe thing first. The weather, which in our town is always competing to be the main character. His gutters, which he'd finally hired someone to clean. The dog next door who keeps learning new ways to escape. Watching us from the sidewalk, a red-tailed hawk rode the heat above the blacktop, turning and turning like it had all the time in the world. Then Andrew leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he was trying to keep them from drifting up and confessing before he did. He's 50, maybe 51. There's gray in his hair that looks like somebody dusted him with flour. He has those hands men get after years of fixing things, with little half-moons of scars and a permanent faint stain of motor oil. "I brought flowers because I didn't know what else to bring," he said finally, looking at them instead of at me. "You don't bring coffee to something like this. You don't bring a toolbox. I figured you bring something honest." The breath I took had weight to it. "To what?" I asked, though my heart had already moved ahead, fast walking toward the answer. He looked up, and there it was. The steadiness I've seen when he carries heavy wood from his truck or lifts a ladder against a wall he's not sure will hold. He was steady even while he looked scared. "I've been wanting to tell you something for a long time," he said. "I kept telling myself to wait, until your divorce was behind you, until my head was straight, until... I don't know. There's always another reason to wait. But life doesn't wait, not really. I thought I had more time to get it right with Claire, and then, well, you know how that went." He went quiet for a beat, and in that quiet, I saw his late wife's name land between us as gently as it could. "I know," I said, "and I'm sorry." He swallowed and nodded once. "I thought grief would be like a storm. Big, loud over. But it turned out to be the new weather. I lived inside it, and then one day I was fixing your fence. Do you remember? The wind had snapped that crossbar like a breadstick, and you brought me lemonade that was too sweet, and I told you it was perfect. That afternoon, for 2 minutes maybe, the weather changed. I remembered. The one pair of gloves I could find had been mismatched and too big, and I'd kept pushing them up at the wrists so I could carry the nails without dropping them. He'd shown me how to hold the board while he set the first brad, his hand close to mine but not touching. Through the thin cotton of my shirt, a breeze had found my shoulder blades, cool as a sigh. It had been nothing. It had been something I invited to visit me in the evenings when the house got quiet. "I've been trying to ignore it," he went on, eyes steady on mine, "because you deserved calm. Because I didn't want to be that story. Man next door, too eager, too soon, too much. And because I thought I could just keep helping you with gutters and fences and let that be enough. But it isn't, not for me. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe nothing. Maybe I've ruined our good neighbor thing by bringing it up." He let out a laugh that didn't quite make it to the surface. "But I had to tell you. I care about you, Margaret. More than neighbor. More than friend. I don't have a flashy word for it. It's the slow kind, the kind you notice when you're carrying in groceries and realize you bought the brand of soup she likes by accident. The world is a strange thing when you receive a truth you secretly hoped someone would say. It doesn't explode. It steadies. My shoulders sat down. My breath remembered its own rhythm. The maples kept being maples. The hawk kept riding its circles. And inside me, the story I'd been narrating, about being fine alone, about being the kind of woman who took her ring off and put her heart on a high shelf, made a soft sound, like a book closing, not because the story was over, but because a new one needed the same quiet. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he added quickly, seeing my silence. "If I have, tell me and I'll figure out how to." "You haven't," I said. "You haven't." I don't know why my eyes stung then. Maybe because the honesty felt like someone opening a window, and I didn't realize how stale the air had gotten. Maybe because it reminded me of my own fear, which I keep in a tidy drawer, buttoned and folded. Fear of getting it wrong again, fear of needing someone, fear of the mirror of another person seeing me clearly in bright afternoon light. "I'm not great at being rushed," I said, not sure if I was warning him or reminding myself of a promise I'd made. "I'm out of practice at all of this. But I'd like honesty, too. And time." He nodded like a man hearing the weather report he'd hoped for. "Time," he said. I can do time. We didn't reach for each other. We didn't have to. The kindness sat between us, linen soft and sturdy. He told me about the way Saturday mornings had gotten long for him since Claire died, how he'd start projects just to have something to start. I told him about my habit of leaving the TV on low while I cooked so the house wouldn't feel like it was listening to me. He admitted he'd been the one who shoveled my walkway last winter at dawn before I woke up, not the neighbor's kid I tried to pay. I admitted I'd figured as much in baked banana bread I never delivered because I couldn't find the right knock on his door that would say thank you without saying more. We talked about small things with the gravity they deserved. The way coffee tastes different when someone else pours it, the way a laugh lands in your body depending who's sitting across from you. The hawk took off down the block, and the radio somewhere changed to the news. It occurred to me one reason Andrew feels steady is that he notices the tiny adjustments life needs, the quarter turn on a hinge, the extra nail where wood wants to warp. He did that with people, too. He noticed. He touched the flowers then, fingers brushing the paper like he was smoothing a map. "There's a second thing," he said, voice low, "and I don't know if it belongs in the same conversation, but I don't trust myself not to lose my nerve if I leave without saying it." I waited, the way you wait for a kettle to click off. Not impatient, attentive. "I'm not going anywhere right this minute," he said, "but my sister's been trying to talk me into moving closer to her. She worries about me. And the truth is, I've been thinking about it. A new start, fewer rooms to feel empty in. Before I called a realtor, though, I realized I needed to know if staying, really staying, made sense. Not just for a house. For this." His hand made a small circle that seemed to include the table, the air, the place between our chairs. Something in me rose up, a sudden clear refusal to imagine my street without his green shutters, my porch without his footfall, my winter without those early morning ridges in the snow where someone had cleared a path. I don't fall in love fast. That's not the life I've had. But love, I think, is sometimes the willingness to say yes to a beginning, and beginnings ask only that you don't look away. "I don't want you to leave," I said, feeling the truth of it land in my own lap. "I don't know what will be, Andrew. I can't promise you a label before I know what it means, but I know I don't want you to leave because you think there's nothing to stay for." His inhale sounded like relief and surprise at the same time. He looked down to hide the shine that came to his eyes and nodded like he was anchoring something to this moment. A tent line, a vow to himself. "All right," he said. "Then I'll stay. For now. For time." We still hadn't unwrapped the bouquet. It felt right to do it together then, carefully, peeling the brown paper back. The daisies were fresh, the kind that squeak a little under your fingers when you arrange them. I found a jar under the sink and filled it halfway, tapping the side so the bubbles would lift. He trimmed the stems with the pocket knife he always carries, little green commas falling to the table. "Honest flowers," I said again, placing them so they faced outward like a small audience. "They're perfect." "Not perfect," he said, "just true." We lingered there, watching the way water moved up the stems. I could smell a faint sweetness, nothing fancy, like clean laundry on a line. He told me about the time his mother taught him to make daisy chains and how he had thought he was too old, already 11 and pretending he didn't care about such things. She'd said, "There's a difference between childish and tender, and the world needs more of the second." He kept that line, and I could see why. I put it beside my own favorite, the one my grandmother used to say when I was hurrying the gravy and ruining it. "Slow brings out the flavor." I don't know what neighbors saw as they drove past. Maybe just 2 adults and a bouquet. But to me it felt like a porch turning into a harbor. We sat there until the shadows got taller than everything, until the maples let go of the last gold on their undersides, until the radio down the block cut off mid-sentence as someone turned the dial. When he stood, finally the boards sighed. He put his hands in his pockets the way men do when they want to be sure they're not reaching for anything without permission. "Can I take you to breakfast tomorrow?" he asked, quiet, as if the porch itself might say yes or no if I didn't. The farmer's market has those cinnamon rolls the size of hubcaps. I smiled at the image. "Breakfast sounds good. I'll bring the 2 sweet coffee." "Perfect," he said, and the word, coming from him, didn't scare me. He made it halfway to the gate before he stopped and turned back. "One more thing," he said, voice back in that careful place from the start. "What I told you, there's a part I left out. It's nothing bad, just more truth. I want to tell you, but I don't want to crowd you with it all at once." I felt only curiosity and a small, unexpected surge of gladness that there was more to learn. "Tomorrow," I said. "Tell me tomorrow." He tipped 2 fingers in a little salute I'd never seen him do before, like a habit from some younger self, and went. The gate clicked shut behind him. The street made its evening sounds. Tires bursting across asphalt, someone's screen door complaining, a distant laugh that might have been a child or a crow. Inside, the house smelled like lemon oil and the faintest trace of lavender from the drawer where I keep napkins I never use. I put the daisies in the center of the table and stood looking at them, at the way they made the room truer somehow. I thought about time, about tenderness, about all the ways a confession can change everything, not by breaking what was, but by revealing what was possible. I washed 2 plates, though we hadn't used any, the way you clean in anticipation of guests, and dried them so carefully you'd have thought they were new. Then I went back to the porch for the broom I'd left leaning against the rail. The evening was cooler, the stars shy and few. I thought I could still smell the faint green cut of the stems on my hands. It smelled like beginnings, which don't have a scent until, one day, you notice they do. Before I locked up for the night, I looked down the block toward Andrew's house. A light turned on in his kitchen. Then another, softer, warmer. You wouldn't have known anything had changed if you were just passing through. But something had, quietly and thoroughly, in that way honest things do when you're brave enough to say them out loud. The morning after Andrew came with those daisies, I woke up earlier than usual. I stood by the kitchen window, watching the light stretch itself across the street, and I felt that rare mixture of nerves and calm that only comes when life has just shifted in a way you didn't expect, but somehow always needed. The daisies sat in the center of my table, their white petals opening wider, as if they too were waiting for what the day would bring. I don't usually dress up for breakfast, but I found myself smoothing my hair twice and reaching for the softer blouse I'd been saving for no occasion at all. I told myself it was silly. It was just Andrew, just my neighbor, just breakfast. But I knew better. Some mornings don't need announcing to be extraordinary. You can feel it in the air before you've had your first sip of coffee. When he knocked at my door, he didn't come empty-handed. He held a small paper bag with steam curling out of it, and that lopsided smile of his, the one that looks like he's caught between apology and delight. "Cinnamon rolls," he said, "the kind that stick to your fingers." And just like that, the awkwardness I'd worried about melted. We walked together toward the farmer's market, the sidewalk still damp from last night's sprinklers, the town stretching awake with the smell of bread and roasted coffee drifting from the square. He kept his pace with mine, his hand brushing close but not reaching. At the market, everything was bright and full of life. Tomatoes stacked like jewels, children running with juice cups in hand, old friends stopping in the middle of the aisle to tell stories they'd already told twice. We found a small table at the corner, where the morning sun came through the striped awning in slanted gold lines. Over coffee, He told me the part of his confession he'd held back. When Claire passed, he began, his voice quiet but steady. I thought the world had ended. But what really ended was the part of me that thought I didn't need anyone. For months, I lived like the house was a bunker. Silent, dark, closed. Then you started leaving your porch light on late, and I'd catch it when I went to get the mail. It wasn't even about you, not at first. It was just proof that someone was still awake, still living. And slowly, I realized it was you that pulled me back without knowing. I listened, my coffee cooling untouched. There's a weight in hearing you've been someone's anchor without even knowing. It humbled me,